Number 8. Brady OESTRIKE. In Wyoming, Michigan, 2014, a pregnant teenager and her boyfriend were murdered after agreeing to meet up with a stranger they talked with online. 18-year-old Brooke Slocum and her boyfriend, 25-year-old Charles Oppenheer, were invited to Brady OESTRIKE's home where the tragic murders took place. It was discovered that before their deaths, the couple had exchanged a few emails with OESTRIKE. It seemed as though the young soon-to-be parents were struggling financially and needed to find a quick way to get some cash. So it was agreed that OESTRIKE would pay to see Slocum and Oppenheer sleep together. But the exchange didn't go exactly as planned, as the couple mysteriously disappeared on July 12th. Slocum was eventually discovered stashed in the trunk of OESTRIKE's car, and her cause of death was determined as strangulation. The 18-year-old's unborn daughter also died as a result. Oppenheer was found decapitated just 1 day earlier in a park. Initially, his head was missing, but it was later located on private property in northern Kent County. Law enforcement zeroed in on OESTRIKE after tracing the messages between the couple and the killer to his home in Michigan. A search warrant was obtained not long after, which is when police visited the man's property. After seeing officers arrive at his house, OESTRIKE, who was armed with a gun, escaped on foot. A SWAT team was then called to help in the manhunt, but the chase ended fairly quickly since OESTRIKE decided to take matters into his own hands. Before he was captured, the killer shot himself in the head, ending his life. Number 7. Teen gunman. In a car sale gone wrong, a couple from Aurora, Colorado were shot and killed on August 14, 2020 by the seller who they'd only spoken to on the internet. 40-year-old Jocelyn Rowland and her husband, 39-year-old Joseph Rowland, were murdered outside of an apartment complex as they tried buying an SUV. The couple had about $3,000 on them to purchase the vehicle that had been advertised on the Let Go app by 18-year-old Kyrie Brown. But when the parties met up around 11 p.m. one night, Brown allegedly shot them both to death. After the murders, the online seller took off with the cash. This tragedy was only made worse by the fact that Jocelyn and Joseph's 5 children were left without parents, unable to say goodbye. The car Brown was supposedly selling had actually been reported stolen, and it was later determined that he and an unarmed accomplice had illegally taken the car from a Montbello neighborhood in Denver before listing it online for sale. The killer was later arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder after he confessed to shooting the couple. And as a consequence, Brown was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in prison without possibility of parole. Number 6. Craigslist killers. On their wedding anniversary in 2013, a couple from Pennsylvania posted an ad on Craigslist with sinister intentions. 19-year-old Miranda Barber and her husband Elliot found out that they could make some decent money anywhere from £30 to £550 by having the young woman simply go on a walk or go to dinner with another man. But they took their scheme one step further, believing that it could earn them even more cash. And while Elliot later insisted that what they were doing wasn't actually prostitution, they were essentially offering strangers online the chance to have sex with Miranda in exchange for financial compensation. This arrangement was welcomed by a 42-year-old engineer named Troy LaFerrera, who was looking for a discreet way to cheat on his wife. And so the man responded to the Craigslist ad and planned to meet up with Miranda on November 11th, which just so happened to be Elliot's 22nd birthday. The couple drove to a shopping mall in their SUV that day to meet up with the client, but Elliot hid in the back of the car underneath a blanket. After receiving the cash for their arrangement, the couple drove 6 miles away to a location near Sunbury in a separate car from Troy. Once there, Miranda let the engineer into the vehicle before asking him, "Did you see the stars tonight?" This was apparently a signal that meant it was time for Elliot to make his move. Then, from the back of the SUV, he revealed himself before wrapping a cable cord tightly around Troy's neck. And as the man fought for his life, Miranda allegedly took a knife and stabbed him 20 times. The two then dumped Troy's body in an alley before heading to a strip club to celebrate Elliot's birthday. The victim was then found the next day, which is when investigators saw the messages that had been exchanged between Troy and the couple. When they were brought in for questioning, Elliot quickly confessed that they had committed the murder simply because they wanted to experience killing someone together. As a result, the couple was taken into custody and they were both charged with first-degree murder. In 2014, each of them were ordered to serve life behind bars without parole. Number 5. Joshua Gorgone. It's become pretty common for people to buy things online, and most of the time things go smoothly without any issues. But there have been a few cases where trusting an internet seller led to fatal consequences. One platform in particular has resulted in the deaths of multiple individuals: Facebook Marketplace. Take, for example, the story of Denise Williams from Pennsylvania, a 54-year-old woman who was stabbed to death by a man who she was supposed to buy a refrigerator from in April 2021. The mother, who worked as a nurse, was killed after she and the seller, 26-year-old Joshua Gorgone, got into a fight over the price of the appliance. And on April 5th, the same day Williams met up with Joshua, she went missing. She traveled to Gorgone's apartment to buy the refrigerator as a gift for her boyfriend. The two had spoken with each other via Facebook Marketplace to arrange the sale. When the woman's family couldn't get in contact with her for some days, they got worried and reported her disappearance to the police. An investigation ensued, which is when law enforcement tracked Williams's phone to somewhere in the city of Johnstown. The woman's car later turned up about 8 miles away in Richland Township. Detectives claimed that they found fresh blood on the doors of the Chevrolet Trax. A small bag of cocaine was also located inside the car, as well as a $160 ATM withdrawal receipt from earlier that day. The keys to the vehicle, though, were nowhere in sight. Authorities later spotted Williams inside the bathroom of Gorgone's apartment with multiple knife wounds to the chest. Investigators believe Gorgone moved the victim's car after Williams already passed away. They also think the drugs found inside the vehicle belonged to him. And so Gorgone was charged with aggravated assault, criminal homicide, and assault with a deadly weapon. In the end, the Facebook Marketplace killer was sentenced to life behind bars, where he'll hopefully not be able to hurt anyone else. Have you ever been scammed online? Let us know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button to join the Badger fam. Number 4. Christopher Jordan Johnson. In another case where Craigslist meetup went sour, a man was killed in Asheville, North Carolina, when he agreed to let a couple stay in his home after responding to an online ad in November 2013. 23-year-old Christopher Jordan Johnson asked for help finding a permanent residence online when he and his girlfriend, 27-year-old Christina Mary Guffey, found themselves homeless. Soon enough, they found someone willing to help: Timothy Keith Radford. The 54-year-old man didn't want money. He instead made an arrangement with Guffey. The initial plan was for the woman to have sex with Radford in exchange for the living situation, but soon after arriving at the man's property, Guffey changed her mind. A fight then broke out between the woman and Radford, prompting Johnson to grab a gun he'd stolen earlier from one of his girlfriend's family members. He then shot Radford to death. After killing him, the couple stole the victim's wallet and cell phone, as well as one of his rifles. They then fled in Radford's 1994 Chevy pickup. It was determined that the couple didn't intend to commit any crimes when they agreed to live with Radford, but that Johnson felt the need to defend his partner and himself. Regardless of the reasons behind the murder, Johnson pled guilty to robbery with a dangerous weapon and second-degree murder. He received a 15-year prison sentence as a result. Guffey also pleaded guilty to robbery with a dangerous weapon. She was ordered to serve 10 years behind bars for her involvement. Number 3. Augustine Rosendo Fernandez. In 2014, near Palm Springs, California, a man from Long Beach responded to a car sale ad on Craigslist, only to kill the seller, who was studying at Cal State University. It took only 15 minutes for a jury to find 29-year-old Augustine Rosendo Fernandez guilty of first-degree murder for Abdullah Abdulatif Al-Qadi's death. The victim, who moved from Saudi Arabia to the States to major in engineering, listed an Audi A5 convertible for sale. But on the day he met up with Fernandez to sell the car, he went missing. Al-Qadi's body was later discovered along Interstate 10 in Palm Desert, about 40 miles east of the spot in Beaumont where his cell phone had last been used. The victim had multiple stab wounds. The Audi was listed at a $30,000 price point, so the college student was more than likely excited to sell the car to Fernandez. But what started out as a simple routine purchase ended in a robbery, carjacking, and murder. It was later determined that the killer likely took Al-Qadi's life in order to keep his money and the car, but as a result of his actions, he was sentenced to life behind bars. Number 2. Daniel Tenner. A woman from Pascagoula was shot to death in Terrytown, Louisiana in the middle of 2022 when she tried buying an iPhone from a seller on Facebook Marketplace. 20-year-old Daniel Tenner apparently confessed to police that he robbed and killed Morgan Tyrone on April 10th. The victim and her girlfriend traveled to Terrytown in order to purchase the cell phone, getting to Tenner's home around 10:30 p.m. The buyer and seller then went back and forth over who'd hand over their part of the transaction first, the agreed upon $300 in cash or the iPhone. But when Tyrone started to put her money back in her wallet, Tenner, who was outside the couple's car, pulled out a gun and fired into the woman's skull. The impact splattered brain and blood everywhere, leaving the victim's girlfriend, who was sitting in the driver's seat of the car, horrified. Afterward, the gunman pointed the weapon at the other woman and the couple's toddler in the back seat, then demanded she give him the money. And so, out of fear for her own life and the safety of her kid, she handed Tenner the cash before driving away. Luckily, the police tracked the killer's phone, and it was determined that he'd been staying at an apartment located about a block away from the crime scene. A few days later, Tenner made his way back to Jackson, where U.S. Marshals arrested him. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 1 count of first-degree murder, and armed robbery. The case is ongoing, so Tenner's punishment hasn't yet been decided. Number 1. Tony Mason III. In early 2023, a man in Chicago who agreed to sell some designer sneakers after posting an ad on OfferUp opened fire on a car full of teenagers in West Pullman during their agreed-upon meetup. The shooting left 17-year-old Jordan Nixon dead. He was sitting in one of the back seats of the vehicle. The teen's 4 other friends, one of whom had planned to buy the shoes from 18-year-old Tony Mason III, made it out of the situation with their lives. The seller allegedly asked the buyer to meet him for the transaction about a block away from where he lived at 11942 Estate Street. But when he approached the victim's car with the shoes, he pulled out a gun from his waistband instead of making the exchange, in which he was supposed to receive $240 in cash. After opening fire, Mason fled the scene on foot, but the shooting was captured by multiple nearby surveillance cameras, and the gunman was later identified by the other teenagers. And just 2 days later, Mason was apprehended when he was captured by the authorities getting into his aunt's car. But since this case is so recent, Mason has not yet been sentenced. His motive for the crime is also unclear, but it's probable that he wanted to keep his shoes and the money. Would you ever buy something from an online seller by yourself? Or would you think it's safer to have someone with you when you go out to complete the transaction? Let us know down below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger. Bye for now.